You know, if you walked into a dinner party and shouted, "Let's talk about corporate governance," you'd probably clear the room in under 10 seconds. It sounds like the driest, dustiest topic imaginable. Just piles of paperwork and guys in suits signing things, right?
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like the linguistic equivalent of watching paint dry. But here's the kicker. Every massive corporate scandal, every billion-dollar collapse, and every time you see a CEO being led away in handcuffs on the evening news, that is a corporate governance story. It's not boring. It's actually full of betrayal, power struggles, and high-stakes drama.
That is quite the rebrand. So, we aren't talking about filing taxes. We are talking about the rules of the game.
We are talking about the nervous system of an organization. Think of it this way. If a company is a high-performance sports car, most people think governance is the speed limit. They think it's just there to slow you down. But actually, governance is the braking system. And you don't put massive brakes on a Ferrari just so you can drive slowly. You put them on so you can drive fast without crashing into a wall.
I like that. The brakes allow for the speed. So, let's strip it down. When we look at the structure of ethical management, who is actually driving the car? Is it the CEO?
That's the million-dollar question. In a poorly governed company, yes, the CEO is driving, holding the map and also fixing the engine, with nobody checking if they're actually heading toward a cliff. But in a healthy structure, you have checks and balances. You have the shareholders, who own the car, the board of directors, who set the destination and watch the driver, and management, who actually steers. The tension between these three is where everything happens.
But that tension can get messy, can't it? I mean, we've seen plenty of rock star CEOs who basically treat the board of directors like a rubber stamp. They just want yes men around the table.
Precisely, and that is the single biggest red flag in corporate history. When a CEO surrounds themselves with a board of friends, family, or people who owe them favors, you lose accountability. That's not a board. That's a fan club. Ethical management requires friction. You need a board that is independent enough to look a powerful CEO in the eye and say, "No, that's a bad idea," or "Prove to us that this is legal."
It's interesting you say friction. We usually think of efficient business as being frictionless, but you're saying that if things are too smooth at the top, that's actually dangerous?
Exactly. Efficiency is great for the assembly line. It is terrible for strategy and ethics. If a decision to cut corners on safety to boost quarterly profits slides through without anyone challenging it, that's efficient in the short term, but it's catastrophic in the long term. Ethical governance introduces a deliberate pause. It forces the leadership to answer the question, just because we can do this, should we?
That brings us to the stakeholder versus shareholder debate. This feels like the biggest philosophical shift in the last 20 years. It used to be just about the money, right? The Milton Friedman doctrine, the only social responsibility of business is to increase its profits.
Right. And for a long time, that was the gospel. If you made money, you were ethical by default. But that view has really crumbled. We've realized that a company doesn't operate in a vacuum. It extracts resources from the environment, it relies on a healthy workforce, and it needs a stable society to sell products to. If you burn out your employees, poison the local river, and dodge taxes, you might show a profit for 3 years. But in year 4, you get sued, your talent leaves, and your brand is toxic.
So, modern governance isn't just about being nice. It's about survival.
It's risk management. That's the cold, hard truth of it. Treating your employees well and being transparent isn't just charity. It's an insurance policy against your company imploding.
Let's dig into the transparency part. Because every company website has a tab that says, "Our values." And it usually lists things like integrity, honesty, excellence. But words are cheap. How do you structurally ensure those words actually mean something when the pressure is on?
You have to separate the police from the politicians. In a robust structure, you have things like an audit committee that doesn't report to the CEO, they report directly to the board. You need internal whistleblowing channels that are actually anonymous.
Whistleblowing is a tough one. Culturally, nobody likes a snitch. But in business, they are essentially the immune system, aren't they?
That is the perfect metaphor. They detect the virus before it kills the host. But look at the history of major corporate frauds. In almost every case, someone knew. An accountant, an engineer, a middle manager, they knew something was wrong. But the governance structure was either too weak to protect them, or the culture was so aggressive that they were terrified to speak up. If your governance structure doesn't include psychological safety, your rulebook is useless.
So culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it eats governance for lunch?
It devours it. You can have the best bylaws in the world, but if the CEO screams at anyone who brings bad news, those bylaws are just paper. This is why the modern board of directors has to stop looking just at spreadsheets. They need to look at culture metrics. Are people leaving? Are exit interviews showing a pattern of fear? That is data. That is governance.
This seems to require a different kind of board member than we had 30 years ago. It used to be the old boys club golf buddies. Now, you need people who understand cybersecurity, supply chain ethics, human psychology.
Diversity is a governance tool. And I don't just mean demographic diversity, though that is crucial. I mean cognitive diversity. If everyone on your board went to the same business school and thinks the same way, they will all miss the same iceberg. You need the person who asks the annoying question. You need the skeptic. You need the person who says, I don't care what the stock price is today, what happens if this algorithm discriminates against our users?
That leads me to something I've been wondering about. We are seeing companies now that are more powerful than countries. Tech giants with GDPs bigger than small nations. Does the current concept of governance even work for them? Or are we trying to regulate a spaceship with a bicycle manual?
That is the terrifying frontier. We are struggling with it. Traditional governance assumes that things move at the speed of human meetings. You meet quarterly. You review reports. But algorithms make decisions in milliseconds. If a company's AI starts doing something unethical, say manipulating user behavior in a harmful way, the board might not even understand how it works, let alone how to stop it.
So the structure of the future needs to be technically literate.
It has to be. Otherwise, you have a situation where the inmates are running the asylum because the warden doesn't speak the language. We are seeing a shift where ethical management means understanding the tool you are building. You can't govern what you don't understand.
Let's pivot back to the practical side for a moment. Say I'm a founder of a medium-sized company. I'm not Amazon, but I'm growing. I don't want to be bogged down in bureaucracy, but I want to build a company that lasts. What is the first structural thing I should put in place?
An independent advisor. Someone who has no financial stake in your next funding round, who isn't your cousin, and who isn't afraid of you. Give them a seat at the table and permission to ask why.
Just one person?
To start? Yes, it breaks the echo chamber. The second thing is to document your decision-making process. Not just the result, but the why. When you have to write down, we are choosing vendor B because, it forces a moment of reflection. If you find yourself writing, because they are offering a kickback, hopefully, seeing it on paper makes you stop.
It sounds like mindfulness for corporations.
In a way, yes. Governance is institutionalized mindfulness. It's the collective prefrontal cortex that stops the reptilian brain from just grabbing everything in sight.
But let's play devil's advocate. Doesn't this cost a lot of money? Compliance officers, audits, independent directors? Isn't that a tax on innovation?
It's expensive, sure. But do you know what's more expensive? A federal investigation, a class action lawsuit, a brand boycott. We have to stop looking at governance as a cost center and start looking at it as an asset. Companies with strong ethical governance actually outperform the market in the long run. Investors love them.
Why? Because they are nice?
Because they are predictable. Investors hate surprises. A company with a cowboy culture is a ticking time bomb. A company with strong governance is a steady ship. They might not grow 1,000% overnight, but they also won't vanish overnight.
Stability as a premium product. I like that.
And think about the talent war. The best young engineers, the best marketers, they have options. They are reading the news. They don't want to work for a company that is going to embarrass them at Thanksgiving dinner. Ethical management is a recruiting tool.
It's reputation capital.
Precisely. And reputation is the one asset you can lose in 5 minutes and never buy back.
I want to touch on the global aspect of this. We live in a globalized supply chain. A company in New York might have perfect governance in its headquarters, but its supplier in a developing nation might be using child labor. Where does the responsibility end?
The boundary has dissolved. You own your supply chain now. The law is catching up to this, but public opinion is already there. You can't outsource your ethics. If your logo is on the product, you are responsible for the hands that made it. This is why modern governance structures have to extend beyond the four walls of the office. You need audits on the ground. You need to talk to the workers in the factories, not just the owners of the factories.
That seems incredibly difficult to police.
It is hard. But the alternative is willful blindness. And "I didn't know" is no longer an acceptable defense in the court of public opinion.
So, as we look at the trajectory of this, we've moved from maximize shareholder value to ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Where are we going next? What is the next evolution of ethical management?
I think we are moving toward regenerative governance. Not just do no harm, but how do we leave the system better than we found it? It sounds idealistic, but look at the resource constraints we are facing. Water, energy, rare earth metals. Companies that figure out how to be net positive are going to be the only ones left standing.
So governance becomes less about rules and more about purpose.
Yes, the structure serves the purpose. If the purpose is just make money now, you get Enron. If the purpose is solve a problem sustainably, you get a company that lasts 100 years. The structure, the boards, the audits, the voting rights, those are just the scaffolding to hold the purpose upright.
It's a fascinating shift. We are essentially asking corporations to have a conscience. But a corporation is a legal fiction. It doesn't have a soul. So the conscience has to be artificially engineered into it through these rules.
That is a profound way to put it. We are building a synthetic conscience. And we have to, because these entities have more impact on our daily lives than most governments do. If we don't code the ethics into the system will optimize for ruthlessness every time.
That is a slightly chilling thought to wrap up on, but also a call to action. It seems like the takeaway here is that governance isn't someone else's problem. If you are an investor, an employee, or a customer, you are part of the checks and balances.
Absolutely. Every time you buy a product, you are voting for that company's governance structure. You are validating their way of doing business.
So, the next time we hear corporate governance, maybe we shouldn't walk away. We should probably pull up a chair and listen closely.
I'd say so. It's the most important story not being told.
Well, we've certainly scratched the surface today. It's clear that the invisible architecture behind the brands we love or hate is what really determines their destiny.
And perhaps our destiny too.
Indeed. Thanks for the deep dive.
Always a pleasure.